my goal for this presentation is really to get you to think. Think about things a little differently, and hopefully ask more questions than being able to have answers provided for you. I think that's the biggest piece for these kind of conferences, where you can commiserate with fellow coaches and whatnot. So, as I said, I'm here for a brief time, but I want to be able to talk about a little bit about talent identification and recruitment. And I'm not coming at it from straight scouting perspective in my role as a Pittsburgh Penguins amateur scout, but I'm coming at it from a standpoint of, as a coach, as a general manager, as a recruiter, whatever role you have, you're basically identifying and recruiting talent to your squad. And I think it's important to understand, people always talk about, okay, you walk into an arena and you sit there and you say, it's all about skating, shooting, and passing. Okay, very simple, very straightforward. However, I remember reading when I was in university, reading a little story on Fred Shero, coached in the 1970s with the Broad Street Bullies, the Philadelphia Flyers, won back-to-back Stanley Cups. He talked about hockey being a very simple game. As a coach, you probably take your players when things are struggling, you always talk about skating, shooting, and passing. But Fred Shero said there's always a but. And what is that but? And that but becomes what we would talk about, your philosophy and your identity. And I think that's what separates teams from other teams, whatever league you're in. And I think it's important to understand that skating, shooting, passing are your base, but then whatever your but is, that's your identity and your philosophy. So the idea is, like, what do you stand for? What do we value as an organization? These are the type of players you want to bring in. What's important to you? What do we believe in? And I look at it, who do we want in our organization? Who do we want representing our organization? And I think about just talking, some college coaches here, some minor coaches, some junior coaches. These things are all encompassing. No different than the National Hockey League. National Hockey League teams are looking and trying to procure talent based on their identity, based on their philosophy. And I'll throw this up here. If we say the 80s Oilers, I think we probably understand what their identity was, from a hockey perspective. Glenn Sather took a group and said, hey, we want to be able to create a certain identity for this team, and then basically recruited and identified talent that maybe not any other NHL team at the time would have taken, but all of a sudden they play for the Oilers and they have success. Just like if I were to say the 90s Devils, what kind of identity would they have? And you probably have that in your mind. And the idea is that you have two kind of diverging opinions in terms of how to build a team. Two different diverging opinions in terms of what type of players they want. Both are very successful. Both are very successful, but based on their philosophy and identity, they stuck with it. To that point, as a sports fan, in baseball, the St. Louis Cardinals, every player that comes into their organization, every coach, every manager within their organization produces a handbook or gets a handbook called the Cardinal Way. And that's the way that they do things with the St. Louis Cardinals. And they're very successful in creating that culture and that identity. And as a result of that, they then, therefore, procure the talent that they need for their team, regardless of what other people say or think.